Hi, this is Andy. I have a special offer for loyal listeners of Accelerate. It's a no obligation free trial of my zero time selling interactive online training. Now, I've worked with thousands of sales reps to teach them how to use my zero time selling to boost their productivity and transform the results. And so, if you want to learn the same proven strategies to help you open more doors, have more effective sales conversations with prospects, and close more orders, then my zero time selling interactive training system is a fit for you. It's incredibly simple to start. Just take out your smartphone and text the word TRUST, that's TRUST, to 96,000. Now, do you have your phone ready? Send a text to 96000. That's a 9 and a 6 followed by 3 zeros. Now enter the single word message TRUST and hit send, and you hear right back from me with instructions on how to sign up for your free trial on my zero time selling interactive training. I look forward to seeing you there. It's time to accelerate. Hi, I'm your host, Andy Paul. Join me as I host conversations with the leading experts in sales, marketing, sales automation, sales process, leadership, management, training, coaching, any resource that I believe to help you accelerate the growth of your sales, your business, and most importantly, you. Hello, I'm super excited to talk with my guest today. Joining me is John Golden, Chief Sales Officer for Pipeliner, a visual CRM system. And CRM systems are indispensable tools for companies of all sizes. Every company needs one. But does every company need the same CRM system, which sort of seems to be some of the assumptions today? And on top of that, what are CRM systems really good at? I mean, how should they be used? Are they productivity tools or just a database to track sales activities? And really, how do they help transform the performance of a sales team? And John's going to help us sort that out. John, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Thank you for having me.
So take a minute, introduce yourself to the audience. How'd you get started in sales?
I've had a long and kind of varied career. I worked at some startups where I was not just sales, but sales, marketing, and everything else to boot. And then I was fortunate enough a few years back to actually take over as CEO of Huthwaite, which is one of the world's leading sales consultancies based around the work of Neil Rackham and spin selling.
Mm-hmm.
So I was very much immersed in selling as we worked with Fortune 500 companies, actually companies large and small across the globe, really teaching them how to sell effectively and how to increase their sales performance.
And you went from much larger entity back to a very entrepreneurial startup mode with Pipeliner.
Yes, exactly. So I came back to Pipeliner, a CRM, where I was just really interested for once in being involved in a software system that could really bring alive all of the kind of skills and behaviors and reinforce the things that we had always talked about around sales. And I'd always found that CRM systems really didn't accommodate this in any way or not easily. And so what attracted me to Pipeliner CRM was that it was built from a salesperson's point of view to make it easy for them to use, easy for them to adopt, and really was delivered with their kind of reality in mind. So that's what attracted me to the software side of the table.
Okay, well, I want to get back to some of those points about Pipeliner in just a second, but sort of start a little more globally is why does every company need a CRM system?
Well, I think it has to do with there's an old saying, and I think I know it comes from Alice in Wonderland, and it's that where I think it's the rabbit says, if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Right.
Right. And I think that's the essence of why a CRM is important, because for me, it's an organizing framework for a sales organization where you can define a sales process and then really start to bring a kind of consistency and uniformity to how you approach selling. And obviously then it is somewhere where you can store all your contact and account information. But for me, the most important thing about it is that it is this organizing framework and allows you to bring a level of consistency because, as we know, Andy, Sales traditionally, we've kind of celebrated the maverick and the kind of do it, whatever way you do it is fine as long as you bring in the results.
Right.
And we know that over time, I mean, that really leads to chaos and a lot of problems down the road, especially if you have people selling kind of what you don't have or over promising or selling in a particular way that suddenly, yeah, you get the sale, but then you have all these implementation and delivery nightmares later on. Or you're at the end, you're trying to placate your new customer because they thought they were getting one thing and they got another. So I think it really is something that helps to bring sort of a consistency, more of a measured and more of a deliberate approach to selling, which is, I know, things like that, what you talk about and, what I very much believe in. So I really think it's something that reinforces that.
Yeah, well, I think that, point maybe you didn't address, precisely in that answer was that, gosh, for a lot of salespeople, they are lost without the process, right? I mean,
Yes.
the guys that, hey, just go make your numbers and, I don't care what you do, that's sort of an elite layer of the sales team that maybe can do that. And if you give that latitude and that freedom to a good portion of your sales team, yeah, you're just going to have chaos. You're not going to get anything out of it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, I've seen it myself, and I'm sure you have. I mean, you've seen salespeople, and they're like, they're working in a spreadsheet, and then they have their own way of doing this, and that's just not sustainable. Even in a small sales group and small company, that's just not sustainable because I think the velocity of business has increased. I think the buyer, they're more sophisticated buyers, so you can't have this haphazard approach to them. They expect you to be organized. They expect you to be educated about them. They expect you to have done your homework and your research, and you can't really do that unless you have you have some way of organizing all that and keeping all that kind of as I said, cohesive and easily accessible. Because otherwise, you're just the buyers aren't going to tolerate somebody who's disorganized.
Right. So, as great as an organizing tool, fantastic. Now, there's been this explosion, obviously, of sales tools coming out in the market that really some lay on top of CRM. Some claim maybe even to be able to replace some of the functionality of what traditionally people sort of perceive CRM to do. How do they fit? I mean, is CRM in danger of being replaced by some of these tools that are coming out that sales engagement, sales enablement tools?
I don't think so, because I think one of the things that I think a lot of the tool vendors miss is that there's lots and lots of these tools being produced, and some of them are neat tools, and they do nice, they're point solutions, and they do nice specific things. But a lot of these vendors, they come out and they produce a tool and they say, oh, well, this is going to be great. It's only $15 per user per month. And what they really overlook is that in most organizations, you have a limited budget for your salespeople. And you're already paying probably, you're paying for their hardware, and then you're paying for probably their Microsoft Office products or or Google, whatever you're using today. And then you're paying for a CRM. You're probably paying for some research tools like, Hoovers or something like that. So a lot of the budget's already taken up. And that's why I think some of the flaw is that there's only so many tools a salesperson can use at a time. And I think at the end of the day that if your salespeople are following a sales process, they are keeping their contact and account information up to date, they're really understanding they're understanding their account, they're understanding the business issues, and they're capturing them somewhere, and they're following a sales process, that's a pretty good foundation. And I think for most sales organization, that's a lot. Getting to that point is a lot. I think a lot of these other tools, while they're great and everything, I think it's almost like they can become distractions. It's almost like, golfers going out and, buying the latest and greatest, driver that's supposed to get you an extra couple of yards. But if you don't know how to swing the club properly, it really doesn't make any difference.
Right. So your thought is that perhaps it's just, in some cases, maybe just one thing too many for salespeople in terms of keeping them focused on the job at hand.
Exactly.
So in this marketplace in CRM, there's this 800-pound gorilla that everybody knows about that has a giant share of the market. How do you position Pipeliner in terms of what it does that's different than what the big guy does?
Yeah. Um, well, I think for one, let's credit where credit's due. When the 800-pound gorilla, and when they weren't an 800-pound gorilla, when they first came on the scene, it was a good technology at the time. But that's quite a long time ago, and I think the architecture there has not changed significantly over the years. And I have used that particular platform on a number of occasions, a number of companies, and it's always been a frustrating experience. And I think the reason why, and I think this is true of a lot of CRM vendors, is that it was never built with the salesperson in mind. It was built from a command and control perspective. So
Mm-hmm.
it was built with, wouldn't it be great for you, Mr. Executive, or you, Mr. CFO, or Mr. Chief Sales Officer, if you could get all of these reports and all of this data, and you could really analyze what was going on with your sales organization, etc. And people were sold on that idea. The flaw in the person missing from that equation was the poor salesperson who then got burdened with the data import and saw no value in return for them. And I think that's the key fundamental weakness of that particular technology and a lot of other CRM systems, is that there is not really a what's in it for me for the salesperson. And at the end of the day, if you don't deliver the what's in it for me for the salesperson, you're always going to struggle with adoption. You're going to struggle with data integrity. You're going to struggle with all of these things because compliance is always going to be an issue, and you're either going to be carrot or sticking or whatever it is, or cajoling your salespeople to fill in the data, or you're going to be hiring people to do it on their behalf, which I've seen in the past. But
Mm-hmm.
it's never going to be something that becomes a tool that the salespeople really believe helps them sell.
But it seems like, undoubtedly you want to have a tool salespeople use and adopt, but the commitment to using it and using a CRM system appropriately really starts at the top, at management, right?
Yeah, and no, I absolutely agree with you, and I think that's another place where a lot of CRM rollouts fall down, because if you're not disciplined as a sales manager or as a sales leader, and you're not going into the system, and you're not, say, doing your pipeline reviews in the system, and if you're not coaching in the system, and if you're not using the system on a daily basis yourself, well, as you know, Andy, salespeople take their cues from their leaders, right, from their
Mm-hmm.
managers. And if they see that the managers aren't using it, and they're not, then they're going to say, okay, this is just another of those initiative du jour, and I can wait this one out, and it'll go away like all those other initiatives. So
So
I
what
100% agree with you.
so what does Pipeliner offer the manager to keep them
Well,
engaged and to use the tool to do a review, as you said, a review in the system to take advantage of the data that's been put in there?
yeah, well, what Pipeliner really has focused on is providing instant visual insights for a manager, so they can look at the pipeline, for instance, and immediately see the health of the pipeline. They can click a button and then see the velocity. They can see whether deals are stalled or whether they're moving appropriately. They can see the size of deals, whether there's a good balance in it. What we're bringing out at the beginning of next month is actually Pipeliner Performance Insights, where you will have visual KPIs and you can see at a glance, from an organization level, a territory level, a region, a team, right down to individuals, how people are performing, their opportunities, their win-loss rates, the value of their opportunities, the value of their wins, the value of their losses, all of that. So we really provide instant insights that can be that a manager can see, and then they can capture in an instant report if they like, and then do a follow up, coaching with that salesperson, that sales team, or that region. So we're all about providing instant usable data to a sales manager so he can effectively manage his sales organization, manage his pipeline, and really get to the heart of what's going on, both positively and negatively, and use that to make intelligent decisions. So we're all about helping keep the manager focused and provide them with the information instantly so they can act.
Right. So, at the risk of using a cliche, it's
Mm-hmm.
it's a dashboard, but it's a more visual dashboard, and maybe Is it something
Yeah.
that's more readily available as part of the standard part of the product? Because a lot of times in CRM systems, those dashboards have to be customized pretty heavily.
Yeah,
And
no, it's dynamic. It's part of it, and I guess that's a unique thing that we do is that everything, all of the features in our system, whether it's dashboards, whether it's buying centers and org charts and all those other things, and even the performance insights we'll be bringing out. Other systems would have, tiered pricing, or you would even have to go out to a third party and get some of these. We provide all of these at the same price. You don't pay any more. You get everything, all the features.
so if a CEO, an entrepreneur, business owner, or sales manager is looking at making the decision either to switch from an existing solution or to acquire a new CRM system, what are the criteria they should be using to make that selection?
Well, I think there's a number of criteria that they should be looking at. I mean, I would go back to I do think that usability, ease of use, intuitiveness, and how it delivers a what's in it for me for the salespeople. I think that's critically important because otherwise you're going to be fighting a battle, and it doesn't matter how disciplined your organization is, you will fight a battle if the salespeople don't see that. So I think that's a critical part of it.
Well,
Um,
the question there is how do they evaluate that, right? If you're a manager, how do they evaluate that this is something that's more usable for the salespeople versus some alternative solution?
Yeah, I would always recommend that they have some of their salespeople evaluated. So don't just evaluate it from a manager point of view, which that's a great point you raise, Andy, actually, because I think that's a mistake people often make in evaluation, is that the managers evaluate it and they go, "Oh, this is cool. Look at all the things I get." And they forget to have some of the salespeople who are going to be using it evaluated. So I would absolutely encourage them to have some of the salespeople evaluated as well, and then the managers evaluated. So if they get both sides of the coin. And then I would also another criteria I would also look at, what is the ease of extracting data from it, or generating dashboard and reports and actually seeing insights. I mean, how much work do you need to do? For instance, do you need to hire an administrator and get them certified and trained by the vendor in order for them to be able to provide you with usable reports? I mean, because that's another fundamental of Pipeliner, is that we make it so you don't need a full-time administrator. You
Mm-hmm.
don't. It's you can learn it yourself. It's all self-service, and we've made it simple that way so that it's not complex. So that's another thing I would say. Look at the total cost of ownership, because not only are you going to pay your per user license fee, but in many systems you're going to have to think about, do I need to hire extra people? Am I going to need custom work done by outside or consultant programmers, etc.? All of that. I think those are all important criteria about really calculating the total cost of ownership of the system as well.
Okay, great. Well, we're going to take a short break, but before we go on the break, I have a hypothetical scenario to pose to you, and you're going to
Okay.
think about it during the break. We'll come back and get your answer afterwards.
Excellent.
So, you're the new sales manager brought into a company whose sales have stalled and stagnated, and management really wants to turn things around pretty quickly. So, you've got a week really to show that you can make an impact. So, what are the two things you do in that first week that would have the biggest impact? So, we'll come back and talk about that
Yeah.
after the break. Stay with us. Talking to John Golden, Chief Sales Officer for Pipeliner CRM. He's going to be back with us after the break. Hi, this is Andy. Connect and Sell is used by sales reps at nearly 1,000 companies, including hundreds of technology startups and several Fortune 500 companies, to overcome the challenges of getting prospects on the phone. Companies using Connect and Sell grow their revenues faster by enabling their sales reps to have more sales conversations in 90 minutes than they could otherwise achieve in an entire week. Connect and Sell can be deployed directly to your sales reps, or you can take advantage of their outbound on-demand service, which delivers qualified prospect meetings scheduled directly on your sales reps' calendars. Visit connectandsell.com to learn more about how Connect and Sell can start filling your pipeline today. Welcome back. My guest today is John Golden of Pipeliner CRM. So, John, let's get into that hypothetical scenario I posed before the break. New sales manager, companies' sales have stalled, stagnated, under pressure to make an impact in a hurry. What are the two things you do in the first week that could have the biggest impact?
Yeah, well, I think one of the first things I would do is go look at the current customer base and see, are there opportunities other opportunities with with our existing customers to actually increase our wallet share there. I think that's something that's often heavily overlooked because we're always in a rush for new business. So that's one of the first things I would do is go and examine, is there actually money sitting on the table at our current customers that we could quickly actually take advantage of. And the second thing I would also do is I would go and look at the pipeline, and I would go back to the early part of the pipeline, and I would look at, are we stuffing the pipeline with lots and lots of opportunities that we have less than a reasonable chance of winning? And I would actually clear out a lot of the junk from the pipeline, and I would really focus our energies in on those opportunities and maybe even over-resource those opportunities that we have a better than average chance of winning. So I think those two things, I would look at current customers, and I would then look at the early stage, and I would clear the pipeline, and I would really focus and over-resource those opportunities that we've a greater than average chance of winning. And I think those two things would have a pretty quick impact.
Yeah, a good answer. I mean, especially the second one is, salespeople rely on prospects as sort of a security blanket, right?
Yeah,
so the more I have, the more secure I feel, even if they're no good.
Yeah, back at Healthway, I coined a phrase. We did a white paper and we called it the feel-good funnel.
Right.
It's like when you look at your funnel and you see, things are rough today, maybe the end of your funnel, you're not closing enough, but you look back at the beginning and you say, things are tough today, but in about 3 months, they're going to be great because look at all that stuff at the beginning of the funnel. And of course, 3 months down the road, you're saying
same conversation again.
Yeah.
Yeah. How many times have we seen that happen? So who's the target market for the Pipeliner CRM product? What's the profile of a typical customer?
Yeah, well, right now we're really focused on the small to mid-market segment. So we're anywhere from 5 users up to several hundred users, depending on the type of business. But we're in the small to mid-market segment right now. We're really cross industries, though we do particularly well in manufacturing, financial services, IT, those sort of segments as well. But that's really our target customer right now, because we can get people, because number one, we're extremely cost effective. As you know, we're only $35 per user per month, and that gets you everything. Also, the onboarding is very fast, can be done in a matter of days. Data import is quick. We can train you and get you up to speed very fast in the system. So we're all about like getting customers on board and getting them using them using the system quickly, and them getting their ROI fast. And I think it's a good market segment for us right now, because oftentimes some small and mid-market businesses, sometimes they don't really understand how to put proper sales processes together. So our system helps them with that. And so we can bring a lot of added value, which is why we invest a lot of time in content and ebooks and other materials to actually help our customers, improve how they approach sales.
So how does somebody, a small mid-cap company, mid-market company, how do they evaluate the ROI on their investment in a CRM system?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a number of ways that they can do that, but I think the best way for them to do that is to start with a number of metrics. I think from once they deploy a CRM system, I think they should look at management metrics in terms of, are they moving things through the pipeline at a better speed, and are they bringing more into the pipeline better qualified? So I think looking at your pipeline metrics is a good way of seeing whether the system is having an impact. And then over time, obviously, I think win rates and success rates. I think they're another good metric to look at, because for me, at the end of the day, if the CRM system isn't helping with efficiency and isn't helping with velocity and getting things through the sales cycle faster, getting better qualified opportunities in, managing those opportunities better. So if you're not seeing increases in that, then I would question the value of the system you're using.
Well, and you bring the term up, velocity, right? And as you know from my writing and my books, time. I'm all about time.
Yep.
what are the things specifically in Pipeliner that are helping this issue of efficiency, which leads to greater velocity of the prospect through your pipeline?
Well, one of the things that we've introduced recently, I think in the last release, was we put the ability to not only for you to configure a sales process, right? So you can configure your sales process with 6 stages or whatever it is that's applicable to your business. But within those stages, we have provided the ability to put in sales actions. So for you to define it required information that you need to get from a buyer in order to move an opportunity forward.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, we've also put in sales activities, so checklists, which and you can make some of these required, is where activities that a salesperson has to complete before they move an opportunity forward. So really bringing that a granular level of consistency and predictability to each stage of the process. So taking the guesswork out of it, because as you know, one of the biggest struggles you have with a pipeline or a sales process in a CRM is that if you leave it too much to the discretion of the salesperson, I'll interpret an opportunity one way and you'll interpret a similar opportunity another way. So you'll have it in stage 3 and I'll have it in stage 2. When in reality, maybe they both should be in stage 2 or they both should be in stage 3. So by creating the ability to really define what are the things you need to do in each stage brings that greater level of predictability to it. And as such, it means that opportunities are better qualified and they move at the right time into the next stage. So you start to get some consistency and predictability there. We also provide the opportunity for you to put a day range for how long an opportunity should typically sit in a particular stage, and then you can see visually which opportunities are actually on target or fine, or which opportunities are now overdue. And therefore the overdue ones you can you can make those kind of targeted interventions and say to the salesperson, okay, what's going on with this opportunity? Why has it sat in stage 3 for 15 days longer than the time allotted for this stage? What's going on? Is that legitimate, or is this now an opportunity that either needs to move out of the pipeline or needs to go back to the stage before or whatever? So I really think those things help with getting your velocity on track, because you're really managing each stage in a very kind of hands-on and granular way.
Okay, one last question about CRM before we move on to the last segment of the show. We touched on this earlier. Sales rep compliance with entering the data. Everybody struggles with that. So what's the best practice these days that you're seeing with your customers in terms of increasing the compliance, making sure that the data being entered is the complete data, it's the data the company needs, and having sales reps participate in the process? I understand it's what's in it for them, but even at the end of the day, they still have to do this.
Yeah, well, I think one of the biggest ones, to be perfectly honest, and that's why we have ours is an online offline CRM, so that if you're not connected to the internet, you can still work in the CRM, which you can't so we're a hybrid cloud model. If you're a full cloud-based CRM, if you've no access to the internet, you've no access to your system. And the reason why that's important is I've always been a firm believer, like salespeople will go to sales meetings or they'll do sales calls and they'll take notes, right? At least they should. If they're not taking notes, well, then that's a completely different issue.
Yeah, that's a different issue.
Yeah. But they'll take notes. So if you can get them into the habit of taking notes directly into the system, and thankfully with our system being available online as well as offline, it means that they can sit in a meeting with the prospect, and they can actually enter the notes and enter the details into the system at the point of contact.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that for me that's a huge thing, because as you know, salespeople, if they scribble a load of notes in their notebook and they come to their CRM maybe a day or two later, and they start to put in, they get lazy, they'll put in stuff. They'll also, put in some of the details. They'll maybe have forgotten some of it. They won't have noted it down. And I think worse, they'll start to interpret what happened. And I think that leads to issues where suddenly, maybe you get an opportunity that has some great notes in it and looks really good, but it's actually a kind of overly optimistic interpretation that was entered with 2 or 3 days hindsight.
Right. Yeah. Editorial.
Yeah. So I really do think being able to use the system all the time and being able to use the system while you're talking with prospects and work in the system is the critical point.
Oh, great. Good answer. Okay. Well, we're going to move into the last segment of the show. I have some rapid fire questions for you. You can give me one-word answers or you can elaborate depending how you choose to answer. But it's up to you. You ready?
Yep.
Okay. First, what's the most powerful sales tool in your arsenal?
Listening.
Name one tool you use for sales or sales management that you can't live without.
Well, I'd have to say Pipeliner CRM.
Oh, good man. Good man. Who's your sales role model?
It would have to be Neil Rackham because I was fortunate enough when I ran Huthwaite, to spend time with him and actually have brainstorming sessions with him out in his writing cabin in the western part of Virginia, and his whole, the whole way that he thinks and thinks about selling and his intellect. So it'd have to be Neil.
Okay. So let me ask this question. Maybe you'll surprise me with this one. What's the one book that every salesperson should read?
I don't understand, but it would have to be Spin Selling. I just believe because, even though it's whatever, how many years old now it is, 35 years old, I think, and the reason I say it, and there's lots of other books that say the same thing. It's just the one that, I'm closest associated with, having worked with that is the idea of asking good questions and listening to answers. And that's why I just think that is, if there's one thing that any rookie salesperson, whenever they ask me, some people email me through LinkedIn and say, what advice would you give me? And I always say, whatever books you read, whatever you do, is ask good questions, but more importantly, listen to the answers.
Okay, you just preempted one of my next questions. So, what's your favorite music to listen to psych yourself up for a sales call?
I grew up on punk and new wave and alternative music, so it would be something probably quite raucous and loud. So something it could be anything from the Clash, the UK Subs, anything like that. Yeah.
Very good. Love the Clash. So, what's the first sales activity you do every day?
First sales activity every day is really to look at your calendar and organize yourself.
Okay. So last question, and maybe you answered this already, but ask it anyway. The one question you get asked most frequently by salespeople is? I would actually say the most frequent question is, what's the easiest way to prospect? Right.
And the answer is, there's no easy way.
There's no easy way to prospect. Exactly. Yes, the loaded questions. Well, good. Well, John, I want to thank you. Today our guest has been John Golden, Chief Sales Officer of Pipeliner, the visual CRM. John, please tell folks how they can find out more about Pipeliner.
Yeah, you can go to www.pipelinersales.com, and there you'll find all the information. We have a really good blog. We have a library of free ebooks that you feel free to download. They're all focused around sales. So www.pipelinersales.com. And thank you, Andy. This has been fun. Good questions.
Oh, great. Well, I'm glad you enjoyed it.
You stumped me on a couple.
So everybody, remember, make it a part of your day every day to deliberately learn something new to help you amp up your business. And subscribing to this podcast on iTunes is an easy way to do that. And make sure that you don't miss any of our conversations with top sales experts like our guest today, John Golden, who share their experience and expertise about how to accelerate the growth of your business. So thanks for joining us, and until next time, this is Andy Paul. Good selling, everyone. Thanks for listening to the show. If you like what you heard and want to make sure you don't miss any upcoming episodes, please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher.com. For more information about today's guest, visit my website at andypaul.com.